Next up, we're keeping our eye on the Golden State. For those of you who know, I'm from California or lived in California for many, many decades, and we happen to know that a lot of our viewers are in California. We can track you all. There's IP addresses out there, you know. And so given the fact that so many of the people who watch O'Connor tonight are Californians, we like to check in on the Golden State and see exactly what's going wrong now. Joining us to help the matter out would be Jeff Charles, contributor at RedState, host of a Fresh Perspective podcast. And like me, he is a Californian who has moved. You haven't been there in a while either. You're now in Texas?
Yeah. See, I moved from California to Texas before it was cool.
Right.
But yeah, I was born and raised in Southern California.
Well, between Texas and Tennessee, and of course Florida, and I hear Idaho has become quite the magnet for Californians who are fed up. It basically contributes to the fact that for the second year in a row now, Gavin Newsom has seen the population of California decrease, and that has a lot of ramifications. First of all, do you think it's just that simple, that people are just leaving because of the politics, or is there more to it?
I mean, it's not easy to live in California. I mean, that's why I left. Cost of living is a lot lower elsewhere. And yeah, I think politics is playing into it, especially like the past maybe 3, 4, 5 years. But even before that, people were leaving California. They lost a lot of their population over the past decade. So yeah. I think it's the politics, and the politics influences how easy it is to live in a state. And I think that's what's doing it.
I think that's absolutely accurate. This is the first couple of years that we've actually seen negative population growth. But I think that the reason that it's stayed somewhat stable is because there's been immigration from other countries into California, a lot of it not legal immigration.
Sure.
And those folks, they aren't really taxpayers. And so now we're really starting to see it hurt the budget. In fact, that brings us to our first topic here. There's a proposal now in California, because, you know, the state assemblymen they're saying, wait a minute, all these people are leaving. That's going to hurt our tax revenue. That's all that matters to them. So they want to impose this global wealth tax, which apparently means if you made money here and you've left, we're still going to try to take your money.
Yeah, I mean, I think what they're doing is they took some advice from that great sage, Don Henley, who said, when in Hotel California, you can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave, especially when it comes to taxation. You know, we libertarians get made fun of for saying taxation is theft. Well, this is a prime example. They want to tax you even when you're not living in the state and benefiting from being in that nice weather with those beaches and mountains.
Yeah.
It's absolutely ridiculous. It's almost like they sat down and said, you know, we have a lot of people leaving. I know, let's tax them even if they do leave.
And they just don't get the picture, Jeff. I mean, they already have the highest state taxes, 13.3% income tax. What's your state income tax there in Texas?
Zero.
So how do you get roads in Texas? How do you have schools in Texas? How are people not just dying on the street in Texas? I mean, that's what Californian lawmakers would have you think, that, well, of course we have to have, and it's still not enough. They're trying to tax you after you leave the state.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and the thing is, contrary to popular belief, we actually don't have roads in Texas. We just ride our horses everywhere, and that's how we get around.
That's
but
right.
That's the point. Who's going to build the roads? Well, road builders will build the roads. I mean, that's what happens. You don't need to have sky-high taxes to make roads happen. It's absolutely ridiculous.
I think that is funny. So I lived in California at a time when they had the highest state income tax, and they had very high property taxes as well. And here's what you get in Los Angeles County right now. You get the highest state income tax, you get the highest sales tax in the country, you get one of the highest property taxes in the country. And there was a time when I think Californians would trade that as like, okay, yeah, I get it, but it's worth it to live in this place, to this beautiful place with the beautiful beaches and the beautiful palm trees and the beautiful mountains and the beautiful... But for God's sake, it's a disaster area now. There aren't beautiful beaches anymore that don't have tent cities of criminal vagrants who are allowed to live there in their own filth. So at some point, don't they have to deliver for those taxpayers?
Yeah, apparently they don't understand that concept, Larry. I mean, they think, oh, they'll just stay here anyway because they just love Gavin Newsom so much and we're just so great. No, there's a reason why people are living. And I think, being born and raised in California, one of the first things that I realized when I came to Texas is that, this is a whole different world. And if you're insulated in that California environment and you don't travel a lot, you don't realize it. You think that California is just the best place to live. And that's not necessarily true. I mean, there were a lot of great things about living in Texas, one of which was not having to commute 2 hours to work every morning. I mean, there is other places out there that are even better. And I think people are starting to realize that.
Well, I think you're right. And I think post-COVID, as so many jobs turned into remote jobs, it's like, okay, I don't have to sit on the freeway in Southern California for an hour and a half to get to my job. I can just stay. By the way, hour and a half commute in Southern California, it's only about 30 miles, right? So I'm going to stay home 30 miles away from the office. Well, if I can do my job from home 30 miles away, why can't I do my job from home 1,000 miles away? And people are figuring it out. But again, what's interesting is state legislators there in California, they're only raising the red flag and only worried about this migration of people from California because they're missing out on tax revenue.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I think one of their assemblymen even said, we have to plug these holes. Our budget is out of control. So they see this as a solution, but it sounds more like desperation to me. Because first of all, I don't even know how you can legally enforce this. If somebody's not living in your state, how can you really, how can you tax them? On top of that, you're going to drive more people away. I mean, if you're making that much money, I mean, you can go visit California anytime you want. If you have friends and family there, you don't necessarily have to live there.
Right.
But it's like they're just not learning the lesson.
I think, though, what everybody watching this right now is yelling back at the television. I mean, you're in Texas. You know this. Hey, that's what you get for voting for the government you get. California is getting exactly what they deserve. This is exactly what they voted for, and it's hard to argue.
It is hard to argue, but I mean, there are a lot of conservatives in California, and I would suspect people always say, don't California my Texas. I think that a lot of people who are moving away from California are more conservative. I was conservative when I left California.
Yeah.
But I think even the system in California is rigged in a way that makes it way easier for Democrats to win than Republicans. So it's not quite as cut and dry as saying, they're voting for it. I mean, in a large part, that is true. But at the same time, the Democrats and really the Republicans were involved in this too, but they have rigged the system to where Republicans really can't pull off major victories. They have a very uphill battle to climb.
Yeah, it's partly because of gerrymandering of the districts. Partly it's because, ironically, when the state passed a ballot measure that it gave term limits, that actually empowered the permanent political class in Sacramento. So it really doesn't matter who wins the election. It's the staff, the people who are actually constantly keeping Sacramento going, that ends up with the power, and they just hand it to the next Democrat. Also, they've got this ballot thing, what they call a jungle ballot, or a jungle primary, right, where the two top people, regardless of their party affiliation, end up. So oftentimes your choice is this Democrat versus that Democrat.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's the choice that California voters have. It's going to be a Democrat or a Democrat, and it's really, really difficult to break through that. I mean, in some areas of the state, it's not. It's a little easier, Orange County and some others,
right.
Kevin McCarthy's district. But in general, it is rigged to favor Democrats, and nothing's going to change until that changes.
Well, it's funny. So I remember living in Los Angeles County when we actually had a Republican mayor. And we had a Republican governor at the same time. And it wasn't that long ago. It was the roaring mid-90s, Jeff. So what will it take to get back there? Does it have to completely disintegrate and fall apart? Do we need a statewide bankruptcy of the government? What will actually change things?
I hate to say it, but I think that's what's going to have to happen. I think things have to get worse before they get better. Right now, maybe not enough Californians are feeling the pain yet, but it's obviously getting there. I mean, if they're trying to resort to these measures, taxing people who don't even live in the state, that doesn't signal much positivity for the future. But at some point, people are going to get sick of it. It's just a matter if it's going to be a few years or if it's going to be multiple decades.
By the way, in the meantime, don't California my Texas, don't California my Florida. How about don't California my country? Because if Joe Biden does not run for re-election, and I'm pretty sure he won't, that governor, Gavin Newsom, Governor Hair Gel, he's going to be running, and he'll want to nationalize all of those disastrous policies that kept getting elected in California.
Yes, he will. I mean, and some people are understand that. I mean, because first off, I've been contending that Joe Biden is not going to run for a second term. I don't care what he says. Gavin Newsom is going to run. I don't care what he says, because he said he's focused on California.
No,
he's running. Not.
He's
No,
running.
he's not.
And Kamala Harris hates him, by the way, so it's going to be a great thing to watch. Pop the popcorn. More to come on O'Connor tonight.